Good afternoon and good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this workshop dedicated to Blue Cloud and the open science platform that we are building as a collaborative research platform across the Atlantic and beyond. Blue Cloud is the flagship initiative of the Horizon 2020 Future of the Seas and Ocean program of the European Commission, and is building a tight connection with a range of projects, initiatives and infrastructures in the marine domain in Europe, but also beyond Europe. And this started around 6 months ago, in particularly with an event, a joint workshop that we organized in June 2021 with the All Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance, the G7 Future of the Seas and Oceans Initiative, and the iAtlantic and Atlant Eco projects as a side event of the All Atlantic Research and Innovation for a Sustainable Ocean Stakeholder Conference. The workshop in June, was a starting point and provided an arena to start a debate with different actors in the Atlantic region to understand what facilities, what tools, and what's the capability that we have for data collection, data sharing, data mining across the Atlantic. A second step, let's say, of this dialogue took place in October 2021, where Blue Cloud joined forces with another 9 European projects to build a cluster of initiatives that produced a report, a policy brief that contains a series of recommendations for sustainable ocean observation and management. And among these 10, this group of 10, there were quite a few that represent the Atlantic region. And then we come at today. So the workshop that you will be following today aims at discussing if the Blue Cloud model can be extended outside the European framework to boost, again, the value chain of ocean information and data gathering and data sharing towards a sustainable ocean management. The event today and all those initiatives in the last 6 months were organized in the framework of the All Atlantic Data Enterprise 2030, an initiative we are partnering with and we are supporting, which creates a sort of one-stop platform and network to try and see if we can reach an all Atlantic ocean data space. So let's start presenting Blue Cloud and Blue Cloud in the European marine data management. So the data gathering from oceans and seas started centuries ago in Europe, like elsewhere, probably in the world. And the framework that we have today can be seen in the image that you can see on the screen, and we represented it over 3 layers. So we have on the bottom the layer of the operators, of the instruments, those that gather the data from oceans and seas. Then we have a second layer, the level of the aggregators, those that take the data and the value and turn this into valuable services and products. And in Europe in particular, we have many of such infrastructures that provide services and tools to the research marine community. And here we mentioned some of the most valuable and strategic in this context, which are SeaDataNet, EMONet, and Copernicus. And then we have the last layer, which is the layers of the end user, so that use these services and do research or take advantage of the information gathered so far. So in this framework, we have the Blue Cloud, which acts as a federator of all the elements and the assets that we have at the aggregator layer. So Blue Cloud combines the data infrastructures, those that you can see on the top of this image, with powerful computing facilities offered by e-infrastructures, offered by European entities, and to offer really a framework where open science can really be exploited and made accessible to research across boundaries. And that's where we are. So this is the mission that Blue Cloud aims at sharing data, processes, and research findings in the marine domain through a collaborative web-based environment that enables open science, underpinned by access to an unprecedented wealth of marine data resources and services and products. How do we do that? There are three, let's say, broad and key main assets of the Blue Cloud infrastructure. The first one is the Blue Cloud Data Discovery and Access Service. So within the Blue Cloud technological and web-based environment, we have a search facility that allows, facilitate users in finding and retrieving data sets from multiple repositories across disciplinary data sets. Then we have the virtual research environment, the infrastructure where the services are, which also facilitate orchestration of the computing and analytical services for the benefit of the researchers who use them. And then we have the virtual labs, which are configured as laboratories, so each one with a specific workflow to serve 5 demonstrators, which serve as a sample within the platform to showcase the potential of or the open science as made available by Blue Cloud into 5 disciplinary research contexts that span from biodiversity to genomic, to environmental research, fisheries, and aquaculture. You'll get into these the technicalities and how all this framework works in the presentation that will follow today. And before introducing you the speakers of today, I'd like to cite Peter Pissersens, which is the head of the project office for the International Oceanographic Data and Information Exchange at the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, who, while talking about the potential of Blue Cloud for global forests, so going beyond Europe, he said that, I mean, IOD, for instance, but also other international fora can benefit from Blue Cloud exactly thanks to its capacity of federating data infrastructures, which have an experience, a 20-year experience of data gathering. And at the same time, Blue Cloud can help develop the next layers. So moving from data collection to the development of products that will then become used and very relevant for the ocean stakeholders. And with that, I'm very pleased to move now to the first part of this workshop, where we will have Thijsse from Maris, the technical coordinators of Blue Cloud, who will introduce you the Blue Cloud Data Discovery and Access Service. After this presentation, I'll leave the floor to Vera from Seascape, Belgium. She will guide you through the very next opportunity to test the Blue Cloud facilities, which is taking place in February 2022, and which is the Blue Cloud Hackathon. And then you'll get the opportunity to experience the virtual labs that Blue Cloud is offering with the concrete examples of research that is performed there, thanks to 4 presentations led by Patricia Cabrera from VLIZ, Alexandre Schickele from the Laboratoire de Scénographie de Villefranche, Massimiliano Drudi from the CMCC in Italy, and Anton Ellenbroek representing FAO. The second part of the event will be a more interactive one. We have the pleasure to have Obakeng Molelu, a visiting researcher at the Coastal and Marine Resources Development in Kenya, moderating this panel, where we'll have different representatives of the Atlantic marine research community. From Toste Hanua, the coordinator of EOSC, Stefan Pesan, representing Atlantico, Georgios Kazanidis from iAtlantic, Ivo Grigorov from Mission Atlantique, Frank Legal from Astral, and Rocio Castaño Primo from Triatlas. Obakeng will guide a discussion that will start from the joint recommendations that these projects pulled out together in the report that I mentioned at the beginning, but then that will be then open to questions and contributions from the audience. So with that, I'm happy to leave the floor to Peter. And while doing so, I also remind you that this webinar is being recorded and all the materials, the presentations will be available afterwards. Peter, the floor to you.
Good day, everyone. I guess you can see my screen. Just a quick check.
Yes, perfectly.
Okay.
We can hear
Thanks.
you.
So yes, good day, everyone. My name is Peter Thijsse from Maris. We are in person of my colleague Dick Schaap, technical coordinator of the Blue Cloud project. What I want to do today is to give you an impression of what the Blue Cloud Data Discovery and Access Service can do for you, and then and how it supports the virtual research environment and the virtual labs that are developed as part of the Blue Cloud. I realized that in my slides there's a little bit of overlap with Sara's slides, but I saw that quite some people were coming in the last 10 minutes, so it's not so bad, I think, to repeat it. Yes. So yeah, as a background of the Blue Cloud, we have, it's a very generic slide, this, the acquisition of marine and ocean data. Many of you will be aware of it. We spent a lot of money in Europe, but also beyond, of course, in the whole world on the data acquisition side, estimated over 1.4 billion already in an older study, so maybe it has already increased. And that is done for scientific research, for modeling, for economic activities and the impact they will have, environmental management, but also for marine conventions and directives and the monitoring that we want to do in Europe related to that. And it should support the EU strategy. So there's therefore also Europe spends quite some budget on data acquisition and data management. So if we look to the European landscape for data management, there we got the slide that Sara also showed. On the left, you can see that there's a couple of main aggregators that we have with Pittonet, EMONet, and Copernicus, but that's by far not all. We also have in Europe a substantial amount of data aggregators, very thematic often, that collect the specific data acquisitions, for example, for gliders or for Argo floats, into thematic centers and then make them available. And also these data goes into CDataNet and EMONet at a certain point, but they also exist side by side. In the Blue Cloud, we organized a substantial amount of these, what we call blue data infrastructures, to make them available to allow a search on common elements of the data in these blue data infrastructures and make them available for working in the Blue Cloud. And you can see here a couple of them named, like ICOS, Pangea, ENA. Many of you all recognize them. And they're all integrated under the Blue Cloud project. I won't go into this one because Sara already mentioned it, but the aim is to promote the sharing of data, the processing and the research findings, making them available to support open science, and in that sense, reuse all this wealth of data and the services that are developed everywhere, second time or more. So the Blue Cloud overarching concept is actually, well, it's very schematically pointed out here. We have the upstream services. Let's see if my mouse cursor, which are, as I said, for discovery and access into these data aggregators. And we have downstream services, which are the added value services and applications in the VRE, in the virtual labs, in this case in the Blue Cloud. But in order to make sure that you can use these data together and you can search them in common ways. So for example, if you search for temperature, that you actually have the retrieve the right data sets back. All these infrastructures are supported by standards from OGC, ISO, W3C, and a lot of vocabularies. And that is also what we make use of. Actually, this could also be summarized as fair nowadays. We all want to have our data resources as fair as possible, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And the more fair they are, the easier they are for uptake into a platform like Blue Cloud or in EOSC. So once more summarizing the major infrastructures, on the left we have the blue data infrastructures forming the upstream part, where we go from bioimaging, genetic data in ENA, taxa, ecotaxa, to also modeling data, EuroArgo for the floats, CDataNet for the historic data. And on the right, we have the E infrastructures that support, that facilitate the downstream. D4Science, the platform where we can process the data on. And EUDAT for storing data, and Bluebridge for the IDs. And Wakeo, of course, for the also retrieving the data from DIAS in. Some illustrations of the variety of data that is supported. And you can see there's huge collections behind it. Argo with the floaters, CDataNet with all the research observation data, Eurobis, biodiversity information, ecotaxa, a specimen found in the ocean, Wakeo for the remote sensing data, and they all feed into the Blue Cloud data discovery and access service that I will demonstrate. And that supports the virtual research environment. And as part of the virtual research environment, there's also the dedicated virtual labs that we will come back later on. So now I'm going to do something tricky because I'm actually going to do a live demo. So if you go to the Blue Cloud, there's the access point to visit the VRE based on the D4Science platform. So that's this button. If you would click that, I've already logged in to make it myself a little bit easier. Then you end up in the Blue Cloud in your workspace, and you can see the data that is available for you to work with. And if I go to my home page of the of D4Science, I can see that I have offered here access to the data discovery as an access service that I can visit to actually retrieve more data into my workspace, because that is the data that I can then use. If it's in my workspace, that's data that I can use in the virtual research environment and into the virtual labs. I have to move a couple of buttons here. Okay, so here you will recognize the blue data infrastructures. And what you see here, what we call level 1. And level 1 is actually, you see that as collections. as a kind of aggregations or grouped collections on a specific facet. So and you can see that even that chemistry, for example, offers 207 data aggregations. Your Argo 16,000, Eurobus 927, but actually that is just the collection level. We will go later into what we call level 1, and that level 1 is really the one-to-one data sets. But this level level 1 you can use to get an impression of which data there is. So you can dive into the collections. You can have a look, for example, here on the embedded chemistry, and I can see by browsing here what this data product actually is. And I can do the same for your Argo. I can dive in. I haven't filtered anything yet, but I can at least have a look. And I can say, okay, well, this is in the Atlantic. This might be an interesting one. I'm going to show you later how to search. But then I can say, okay, now show me, because this is a profiling float and it actually has a quite a lot of data sets behind it. Show me what is the actual data behind it. And then I go to level 2. And if I can view the map, you can see that this is a very nice couple of cycles that you can find. And if you're interested, you can just either select them one by one, but it's easier to just select the whole data set. And you can see here in the top right that my data basket is filled. Now, this is all nice. I just wanted to show you how you can dive into the data. But this is not a normal use case. Normally, a user would, for example, be interested to use oxygen data. And they could type in here, oxygen, and press search. And then you can see here which collections, you could see it change very quickly, offer actually oxygen data. And then I could make another search, and say, well, I'm only interested in oxygen data in the Atlantic. I press search. And now I could say, okay, that's nice. I see that 68 collections in CDataNet actually offer this. I dive in. And I can see that there are 20,000, almost 21,000 data sets. I now have the first 1,000 in a list. So these are just the 1,000 out of them. But you get an idea of how much data there is. And I could also add additional facets now on the left. And that is because I've entered now the specifics of the blue data infrastructure. So I could filter a little bit more if I want. So I could say, well, let's say I'm only interested in the data from the UK. And now it's filtered a little bit more. And if I say, okay, this is actually the data that I want. Well, I won't order 1,000, I can do it, but it's for testing, I do a little bit less. And this is then also added. So I have now data from 2 different resources. From 2 different blue data infrastructures. I could add more, but I'll add it all in one, as I call it, data basket. And now the system will start once I submit this order. I give it a name. I could say oxygen, and I confirm. And now actually the system behind will start picking up the data from the blue data infrastructures for me. And at a certain point, you can see now that it's ordered, it's an orange. At a certain point, it will move to green. It has picked it up and it's ready for me to use. I will get a notification in my email about that because it takes several minutes, depends how large the order is and how quick the response is of the infrastructure. And then I can choose, you can see it already in the one that I tested with yesterday. It's ready, it's on green. I can choose either to download it, but we are working here in the blue cloud, so we're not advocating to download, but I could. The more important one is that I could say, push this order into my VRE, push it into the blue cloud. and I need to confirm that. This usually takes a few seconds. Yes, and now it says, okay, it's being retrieved now by the Blue Cloud VRE under my account into my workspace. And then I now will go back to my workspace. You will see here a data pool. And here, this is the data set. This is the one from that I just pulled in now, but the one from yesterday is actually there nicely in that CDFs so that I can use it to work in the virtual research environment with this data. Now let's go back. I had a couple of backup slides for just in case, but you can also view it in the later when the presentation is shared to all of you. So just summarizing what the Blue Cloud setup is. We have a virtual research environment at the core, where there's a workspace where scientists can work together on the ocean data, have the tools. That is supported by the distributed marine data resources. And we now have the core there, but we are looking for expansion in potential next projects. It's supported by the D4Science infrastructure, so by good, stable, strong resources that provide us standardized analytical tools, Jupyter Notebook, RStudio, analytic engines, and other tools. And to demonstrate how it can be used and what it can do, we have the Blue Cloud Virtual Labs, which are specific thematic services, virtual labs that users can visit. And it's all aimed at collaborating, sharing, reusing data. There it is, the fairness, and supporting also the reproducibility. As Sara already indicated, there's 5 different virtual labs at the moment that are part of the demonstrators, and you will get in the next presentations, you will get an illustration of the results so far. So that is all from my side at this point. I don't know if there's questions, but I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. I don't see questions so far, but I'm sure you entice the interest of the audience, which is nice demo. Thank you very much. So, I mean, feel free, anybody, to write down if you have any question, or try and register through the VRE and access the service. It's moderated. We'll be more than happy to welcome new users already in this phase. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's, yeah.
I'll stay online. So if there's questions later popping up in your mind, you can put them on the questions and answers, and I'll try to answer them.
Thanks, Peter. And I think that's the best way to move to the next presentation from Julia, who will introduce us to the hackathon that's currently the next opportunity to test and use the virtual labs.
Yes, I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Sara? Yep. Okay, so hello, everyone. My name is Julia Vera. I work for Seascape, Belgium, also one of the partners of the Blue Cloud project. And I'm here today to share a bit of information about the Blue Cloud Hackathon, a very exciting event that we'll be hosting soon, to which we would really like to invite your participation as members of this great ocean community that is building across the Atlantic. So over the next 10 minutes, I'd like to give you an overview of what is this hackathon, especially for those of you who are maybe not too familiar with this term. I will briefly go over the topics of the hackathon, which are closely connected to the work that the Blue Cloud demonstrators are developing, and about which you'll be hearing right after my presentation from my Blue Cloud colleagues. And I will also hopefully give you some good reasons to participate in the hackathon. So what's a hackathon? Basically, a hackathon is simply an event that brings teams of people together to work on a given challenge over a short but intensive period of time, using whatever resources are available. And well, normally the team that comes closer to solving the challenge is somehow rewarded. In a similar way, the Blue Cloud Hackathon is an event that will be bringing people together to work over a number of ocean challenges using resources made available by the Blue Cloud project. So you've just heard about Blue Cloud's data discovery and access service. You're going to be hearing about Blue Cloud's virtual labs and about the innovative services that the Blue Cloud demonstrators are developing. And basically the Blue Cloud Hackathon is going to be an opportunity, hands-on, for you to not only dig a bit deeper into these services, but actually to test and explore how you could potentially use them or even improve them to help solve a specific ocean challenges that will be presented to participants. So a bit like joining a game, really, but working with real life challenges that we face in our relationship with the ocean. Now, what challenges are those? We have selected 4 topics that will be framing the challenges that we will present to participants. Understanding the ocean is the first topic, which connects with our basic need to improve our current knowledge of the ocean. If there's one key little tiny creature that can help us to better understand the ocean is plankton, as you well know. So under this topic, we'll be inviting you to help hack available plankton big data to address important knowledge gaps that scientists are trying to close. So if you're passionate about exploiting big data and about developing ways of analyzing or visualizing it to deliver new insights, then I would say that the challenges that we'll be bringing to you under this topic will most likely appeal to you. The second topic connects with our need to feed the world. We know that the ocean is a very important source of protein for people. We also know that aquaculture is opening an amazing round of opportunity to produce healthy food for a growing population with a smaller environmental footprint than other forms of food production. But we somehow still struggle to find ways of better assessing the environmental risks that are connected to aquaculture farms. Just as aquaculture businesses many times also struggle to manage the risks of deploying their operations under sometimes very severe sea conditions and to optimize their performance. So if you're good at combining different data to generate meaningful risk maps, for example, that could guide better aquaculture monitoring or support better decision making for sustainable aquaculture, I think you will find the challenges under this topic enticing. The third topic of the hackathon relates to our need to better anticipate changes in marine ecosystems and to provide early warning mechanisms on the effects of climate change or human-induced impacts on the ocean. And under this topic, we'll be looking at using marine indicators to assess the environmental condition of marine areas, or at tapping on available climate and environmental data to predict how climate change might affect marine ecosystems. So again, if you're handy at developing algorithms, for example, to find correlations between different variables, or at transforming data into visualization tools that can contribute to somehow anticipate trends or to build better predictions, then you will find this topic of interest. But last, and I would say not least, if none of these topics hit close to home, we have also planned for a wildcard that will allow you to use Blue Cloud services and resources in combination with any other resource that you may choose to use to build any idea for an application that could contribute to our mission of decoding the ocean. So basically, this wildcard is an open window for you to explore Blue Cloud and to use your talent and your skills to suggest ideas showing how Blue Cloud services could be useful to the ocean community, or even coming with ideas to improve Blue Cloud services in any way, including making their delivery or their exploitation somewhat easier for the community. So we hopefully have something in this hackathon that appeals to you. From the sound of these topics, you may have already guessed who is the hackathon targeting as participants. Basically, if you're a professional working as a marine data scientist, or if you're a marine researcher, either working for an academic institution or for a company that is active in the blue economy, if you're a computer scientist, or I would say even if you're a student looking to develop a professional career in any of these fields, then I would say this hackathon is certainly for you. But I would maybe dare to say more. If you're passionate about the ocean and about finding solutions to improve the way that we interact with it, then this hackathon is probably for you too. So it's true that using Blue Cloud services does require having some basic skills, being familiar with R, for example, or coding with Jupyter notebooks. But I would say if you can team up with someone who has coding skills, then I'm sure there will be other useful skills that you'll be able to bring to your team. So if you're a great communicator, for example, or if you enjoy thinking outside of the box, then you'll be able to join and make the most of the hackathon. Now, why should I join this hackathon? You might be asking yourself. First of all, I would say it is a great opportunity to be amongst the very first users of an open science ecosystem offering services that have been specially developed to cater to marine scientists. So it's a great way of getting a sneak preview of these services. During the hackathon, you'll be able to interact with the very experts and professionals that have developed them and be inspired by their work. Also, because by participating in the hackathon, if you find Blue Cloud services useful, but you're still missing important features that might be useful to your work, because these services are still on a testing phase, you will also have a chance to provide your feedback and influence how these experts shape their future evolution, or even give us ideas for new future services to make sure that Blue Cloud really caters to your needs. I'm also sure that the hackathon will be a great chance to meet other people working in the field who might share your interests, and who knows, maybe a way to make new contacts and make future colleagues. But if this is not convincing enough, we also have a great prize pool for those teams that come forward with the best ideas to address the hackathon challenges. We have up to 60,000 euros in prizes for the winners, as well as some additional great treats. And you can learn all about this prize pool and the terms of conditions that apply in the hackathon landing page, which is also where you can register to participate if you wish to do so. However, if you're not yet fully convinced, because you still do not really have a clear idea of what is Blue Cloud or how it might be useful to you, I'd say do not be discouraged, because we've structured the hackathon around different stages precisely to give you time to clear all your doubts. So starting January 17th, we will launch what we've called a 3-week virtual ideation warm-up. The objective of this virtual warm-up is to provide you with a window of opportunity to get acquainted with Blue Cloud services before the hackathon. So during these 3 weeks, you'll be able to register to Blue Cloud. We'll provide you with different resources, such as video tutorials, handbooks, to show you how you can navigate through its virtual labs and to better understand what is inside of Blue Cloud at your own pace with the support of good guiding materials. We will also be hosting live interactive sessions to give you an opportunity to ask questions to the Blue Cloud team, to give you more detailed information on the specific challenges that we're presenting to participants, as well as some additional inspiration and matchmaking and information opportunities. And we have a great agenda of sessions lined up that we will be disclosing soon. Then after these 3 weeks of, I'd say, optional content, on February 7th, the virtual hackathon will kick off, and that's really when the clock will start ticking, and participants will have to work within their teams to shape and deliver their ideas for innovative solutions to address the challenges presented. We have a wonderful team of mentors who will be there to help and guide each team as they evolve their ideas. We also have a fantastic team of judges lined up, but more will be revealed closer to the launch of the ideation warm-up. So I think that's all from my side. I'll leave you here again with the landing page of the hackathon, where you can register to come on board, but also find a wealth of information about the hackathon. I'd like to already invite you to save the date for the kickoff live event of the ideation warm-up, which will take place on January 17th. But maybe before I close, as I have mentioned, the hackathon topics that I've described are very closely connected to the amazing work and services that are being developed by the Blue Cloud demonstrators. as Sara has anticipated, my colleagues from Blue Cloud are now going to share with you additional insight into these services and how they can be useful to you. So I would say that the next 30 minutes are also a great opportunity to already start getting a flavor for some of the resources that will be available to you during the hackathon. So I hope to see you soon. That's all from my side, available to respond to any questions that you might have. And over to you, Sara.
Thank you very much, Julia, for this presentation. We hope we got your interest with this hackathon. We hope to see you there in January 1st and then in February. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or write them down in the chat. I had the pleasure to have some one-to-one discussions while you were talking, Julia. And in the meantime, I invite Patricia Cabrera from VLIZ. She will be starting this series of demonstrations of the virtual labs.
Oops. Thank you, Sara, and hello everyone. My name is Patricia Cabrera from Flanders Marine Institute, and I'm representing the demo, the zoo and phytoplankton essential ocean variables, or EOVs products, which is a work that has been done by a great team of researchers from my institute, but as well from the Laboratoire d'Oceanographique Villefranche and the University of Liège. So the Zoan Phytoplankton Essential Ocean Variable Demonstrator provides a description of the current state of the plankton communities and forecast their evolution, representing a valuable information for the modeling, assessment, and management of the marine ecosystems. So this demonstrator consists of 3 parts, as you can see here in the screen, and I will be briefly presenting each of them to then show you a live demo of how to use this demonstrator. So the first product is the Phytoplankton Essential Ocean Variable product, which aims to derive global ocean 3D chlorophyll A concentration maps, as you see here on the left. So to generate this, a set of several input data that are listed in the slide were applied to a neural network model following the method developed by Sauzet. I don't know why this is moving. Here what we observe is for the month of January, representing winter, the latitudinal gradient and a decrease of the chlorophyll A concentration, which is a proxy of phytoplankton biomass, and we observe in 36 different depth intervals. Now, for this product, there was a second neural network that was developed with the same input data. But here what we derive is global ocean phytoplankton functional types, which is a proxy of phytoplankton biodiversity. And it's just following a second neural network model. And we observe here in the 3 graphs different size phytoplankton groups, from smallest to largest, from the bottom to up. And again, here we can also see a latitudinal gradient from small to larger phytoplankton sizes from the equator to the poles. Then the second product is the zooplankton EOV product, which again, it uses a neural network model where a set of input data were used to apply variational analysis and a neural network. And this is using the DivaND tool that uses the Jupyter Hub in the virtual research environment of the Blue Cloud. And it produces these gridded data products. So this is an example of one of the most copepad abundant species in the Northeast Atlantic. And we observe how we go from heterogeneous observations on the maps on the left to more gridded fields on the right. The last part of the demonstrator is the modeling phyto and zooplankton interactions, where here we aim at understanding what are the drivers that limit phytoplankton abundances and what is the spatiotemporal variations. So this is developed by following the nutrient phytoplankton and zooplankton model, which uses a different input data set from EMONET biology, and we can observe in the output, the main output of the model, the typical variation in plankton dynamics with seasonal variation, and we observe the major contributions to phytoplankton abundance being zooplankton grazing and light, following by nutrients and temperature. So how to use this demonstrator? So first you need to follow this link here, and I'm not sure why this is happening. I'm sorry, it just keeps on going, the presentation. So we can access the demonstrator through this link, and you need to register. And now I should have a video running, hopefully. Yes. So once you have registered, you can access the VLab and log in. As you see here, this is my login with my credentials. And the first landing page, we observe the different how-tos on how to use the demonstrator. Here I'm showing an example on how to run the R Markdown. So you need to have some basic skills in R, but everything is really explained there step by step. And this is an example on how to run a Jupyter notebook in the Jupyter Hub. So I am here now opening the shared workspace where these notebooks are found. And there we need to always save everything from the shared workspace into our own workspace to be able to use and adapt these notebooks if needed. So for this example, I'm showing the interpolation with the tool DivaND. So here I open the first notebook, which does the analysis, and one just need to run all cells. And just for the purpose of this video, I have run it first. You see here that it is running because of the gray dot. It takes some time, but I have now shown the notebook that has been already run, and we can see how each cell, the gray boxes, give you an output afterwards, and all the results are saved in a folder that is created in the script in your own workspace. So after running this notebook, we can then go to the plot analysis notebook that I'm just going to open now. And here, based on the previous results, we run again all cells as indicated before, and we can observe the gridded maps that I showed in the previous slide. So that's all for the demo. Now for conclusions. So Plankton EOF products are available for users to explore the data, methodologies, and technologies available in the Blue Cloud virtual research environment. And the integration of the different data sources and technologies allows to see data-driving trends and to understand the interactions between the different EOVs. So these products are useful for researchers, fisheries advisory organizations, and marine policy officers to better understand plankton communities and address threats such as food insecurity. And finally, a collaborative virtual research environment like the one developed here in Blue Cloud has demonstrated that there is a large potential to boost scientific productivity in a collaborative environment. So we invite everyone to have a look, review, and build further on this product, like in the Blue Cloud Hackathon that will happen next year. So thank you, everyone. And here in the slide, you can see everyone that has been doing this work behind the scenes.
Thank you very much, Patricia.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let's move on now it's the turn of Alexandre Schickele. And we'll have a demo as well.
Hello, my name is Alexandre Schickele. I am postdoc at Sorbonne University, and today I'm going to walk you through the Plankton Genomic Virtual Lab, especially Notebook 2 called Projecting Plankton Functional Gene Clusters that you will use for the topic Understanding the Ocean of Blue Cloud Hackathon. So I will go quite quickly through this video tutorial where I will explain you the different R pipelines and habitat modeling and mapping tools that you will find in this notebook. All the examples have already been run, so I spare you the waiting time. And yeah, when you arrive to the Blue Cloud gateway, you can access the data by clicking here, Demonstrator Plankton Genomic Demo 2. Here you will have a shortcut to Notebook 2, and that's what's in it. So you will find a README document that will provide you with all the installation guidelines, where to find the files, how the links for it, how to install them, and how to open your Jupyter instance in the Blue Cloud infrastructure. Also how to install the packages if you need. And so here you have a zip file with the technical documentation in it that you can find in this Word document as well. And you also find in this zip file all the codes that you need for running this notebook. So we can now open the Jupyter instance that we do when we arrive here. So once we unzipped everything, we have the following files. So service 1 IPY notebook is the technical documentation with an introduction, data sources, and the explanations for the inputs, outputs, and principle of the functions, as well as the code to run them. So everything is in here. I will go quickly through this. So for the data sources, you have environmental data that are climatologies. So here is the list of variables that are calculated with the average, standard deviation, etc. over this time period. They are accessible through the data space Plankton genomic datasets in this raster. And then we have genomic data that are the number of reads, so a proxy of abundance of genes per Tara Ocean stations. The genes are grouped in clusters of similar sequences, and they are also annotated by KEGG, pathway, and functions. So you can go on the KEGG pathway. Here you have the link websites. So we will take an example. Here you have all the KEGG pathways, for example, oxidative phosphorylation. Here you have the number corresponding to this KEGG, so the one that you will reference in the pipeline. And if you click on it, you have all the different functions, documentations, etc. about this pathway. So now that we know the data, framework structure is explained here. So first, we will load the different functions. Here, very important, the Blue Cloud directory is the directory where you unzipped your file, and data directory is where we find the environmental data. So these ones should not change. Once you have defined these ones, you can load config file, which will load all the function and libraries that you will need, as well as the functions related to each modeling step. So first query the database, then parameterizing the model, evaluate it, and do the bootstrap projections. For querying the database, we give the function which KEGG pathway we want, the size of the clusters that will be selected in it, so minimum size of 80 stations, a minimum maximum number of genes, as well as the environmental metrics we want, so the average, standard deviation metrics, and distance and bathymetry variables. We can also say if we want relative abundance or not. Once the query is done, you have, the size of your input for the model that are printed here. So the number of environmental features and cluster targets. Then we can train the model that uses multivariate gradient boosting, so that model all the clusters within cake pathway at once. You just give to this model an hyperparameter data frame, so the different parameters to test to have the best model, and it will select you the best hyperparameters here, number 1, so the red one, and the number of boosting round and the loss that correspond is printed. Once we selected our best model, we can evaluate it. So the model was trained on n-fold cross-validation, and we will evaluate on 1-fold that was kept for evaluation only. So to evaluate the model, we can evaluate, it's evaluated by the R² and the root mean square error on all the data. You can choose to do it by target if you want also, and you can print the variable importance also. So here you will have a series of graphic plots with the station number, the abundance, so the real one in black and the predicted one in gray for each target. So you can see the deviation of the model per stations. Once we are happy with the model evaluation, we can do the spatial projections. So here the projections are, we retrain a model and predict on all the data. So we will give, it will get the parameters corresponding to the validated model as well as the boosting rounds, and we just give the same environmental metric as we give to the first trained model. Keep in mind that this can take a little bit time, around 10 minutes for 1,000 boosting rounds, depending on which model was selected. And so this function will give you an output object, a raster, that we can then use for different plots. So among the plotting functions, we can plot the legend of the maps, that is a 2-scale legends. So the abundance is plotted with the colors, and the saturation will give you the standard deviation among every bootstrap run that we did. The maps are plotted with these functions, so 1 map per target cluster. Here we see that the relative abundance of each target is quite low, except cluster number 5, that is more tropical, has more relative abundance in the tropics, and cluster number 18 that has more abundance in the polar regions. So this is maps of genetic potential of some cluster that we modeled within this pathway. If you want to see which function do they correspond, we can refer to the query object of the first step. So query CC description. So here you have each cluster number and the main function they correspond. And finally, we can have also the correlation among, so the spatial correlation among each cluster. So here again, we can see that cluster 5, 11, and 18 are quite different than the others. I hope that this quick video helped you for understanding how this notebook works, and I'll be very happy to ask any question you might have here or within the Blue Cloud Hackathon. Thank you very much for understanding and listening this presentation.
Great, thank you, Alexandre. And now let's move to Massimiliano Drudi for the demonstrators on the marine environmental indicators. Virtual lab.
Thank you, Sara. Hello, everyone. My name is Massimiliano Drudi. I work for CMCC Foundation in Italy, and I will introduce you to the Marine Environmental Indicators demonstrator. First, the target users for this demonstrator are the environmental protection agencies, decision makers in marine sector, and scientists. And to define the scope, some of the objectives are, for instance, to consolidate science-informed decision-making processes, to contribute to create an holistic view of the human activities and of the environment, contribute to implement, extend the value chain from marine data to knowledge, and therefore improve to understand and predict the marine environment. Inside the virtual lab have been implemented several tools. One of them is the mesh generator, which enables the user to compute added value data by selecting a number of inputs information. For instance, the desired output, the input data source, the region and time range of interest, and additional specific parameters if needed. The output come from algorithms that have been implemented inside the virtual laboratory, and the implementations are WPS methods or notebooks. The WPS methods can be exploited through the mesh generator interface, while the notebooks can run in Jupyter Hub. The algorithms are ocean climate, which is implemented as a method, ocean patterns indicator and ocean regimes indicator that are implemented as method and notebooks, storm severity index and harmonized integrated carbon data that are implemented as notebooks. Now we'll go through the algorithms. The first one, ocean climate, provides output characteristics as maps and time series of the physical fields, such as temperature, salinity, water density, kinetic energy, and currents. The purpose of this algorithm is to study the sea condition and trend for different time scales. And the possible input data source that can be used are Copernicus Marine Service products, such as the Mediterranean and the Global Reanalysis. Second set of algorithms are ocean patterns indicator and the ocean regimes indicator. Those are based on machine learning techniques and can process respectively ocean profiles and time series. Those algorithms can group data with similar characteristics, and with the plotting will be possible to show coherences in space and time. Third algorithm is the storm severity index, which is related to the atmosphere and can be used to study exceptional windstorm circumstances. The input data source in this case is the ERA5 dataset from the Climate Service. And the applications for this SSI algorithm are related to the study of individual storm or storm season or storm climatology. Fourth set of algorithms are related to the marine carbon data. In this case, the target is the Sustainable Development Goal number 14.3. And by means of this set of algorithms, it is possible to produce harmonized and integrated carbon data set from multiple data sources which are available. Now the objective is to make the data fit for purpose. And this is an important prerequisite for the future development of applications in this field. So the virtual lab can be accessed through the link above in this slide. In this way, it is possible to send an access request. And once you are in, it will be possible to use the image generator interface and to run the notebooks. And thank you for your attention. For any questions, we are available to receive your email. And I invite you again to join the virtual laboratory of the marine environmental indicators. Thank you.
Thanks, Massimiliano. We actually have an hand raised, so Enrique, feel free to open your microphone if you can and speak, I think. Are you able to? Yes. Enrique, can you?
Yes, what you can? Yes, I am here. Yes.
Yeah, great. You raise your hands. Do you have a question for Massimiliano or one of the presenters before?
I apologize. It was involuntary. I have not.
Okay, don't worry. It's fine. So let's. We have actually a question anyhow from you, Massimiliano, from Anna, in the chat. She's asking whether these are these data meteorological rasterable to permit the uncertainties evaluation of their aggregation. And
well, maybe this is a question that should be done to the John Willem, that now is not with us, I think, which is the developer of that algorithm. And
okay, so maybe we'll pass it
very specific, yes,
to the VLAB team, Anna, and we'll let you know. I'll take your email and we'll put you in contact with them. Great. So, and then we have the last one. So I give the floor to Anton Ellenbroek from FAO.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Thank you all 48 participants for being here. And may I ask Federico to start with the slides? Okay, thanks, Federico. My presentation is slightly different. So I work at FAO of the UN, and we work with fisheries data, and the nature of fisheries data is that it's usually not so public. So we are not sharing a lot of notebooks, but we work really more on the end user side. So what can you already discover through the Blue Cloud that we have managed in FAO and with our partners? So you see the list of partners here, it's quite a long list. So it's people from FAO, people from IRD in France, people from Forth and Greece, and I think we have not the correct version of the slides, Federico. And we also have people from CLS in France, and we will discover later if this is the older version of the slides. Next slide, please, Federico. So a quick outline of my presentation. So first I will give you a few examples of what FVO does with fisheries products that is relevant for the audience of today. I will give then a few examples of how we have used in the past virtual research environments and how we are using them today that come from the Blue Cloud EU supported project. So the global record of stocks and fisheries is an important one where we have a global overview of stocks and fisheries. I also explain a bit how we do spatial data analysis and remote sensing data, how we use that in our VLIZ. I will quickly introduce the global tuna atlas, an overview of tuna capture data. I will tell you how we use the infrastructure for trainings on Sustainable Development Goal indicator 1441, and I will explain very quickly what we do with aquaculture monitoring. Next slide, please. Yeah, this looks much better. Okay, we can. Thanks, Federico. And sorry for the late update. We are in the next slide already. Yes, one more. So in FVO, we since many years we collect 70 years of data already, and we have, for instance, 924 expert maps on aquatic species where they live, and I picked up a few Atlantic species. So if you go to the link later in the slides, you can find much more data on all of these species. So we have in the fisheries department, we focus on species of commercial interest to fisheries, and all data are stored in an FVO owned SDI catalog using GeoNetwork. And that's already a big step towards having fair data on fisheries. Next slide, please. Another FVO product, so the FIRMS is our global partnership of fisheries organizations that voluntarily contribute data and work together to make the data on their stocks and fisheries. So the first slide was on the species, this one is on then the fisheries that exploit them. And we added data and now have more than 1,000 maps that include information on governance and statistics with a focus on species of commercial interest. And again, using the same GeoNetwork SDI catalog with projections in the map that can also come from down under. So we are not only trying to show data from the more richer nations, we really try to focus also on people that have fewer data. We try to help them with making these maps and these statistics. And we then also try to think about visualizations that are attractive for people from other regions on the planet. Next slide, please. So here we already see then after we have the locations of the fisheries, we try to also then add more data on those stocks and fisheries so that we do in a collaboration supported by the EU H2020 projects. And now we are also collaborating with the RAM Legacy database on fisheries and the fish source of the Sustainable Fisheries Partnerships. Both are based in the US, but they contribute a lot of data. So we have a huge effort to harmonize these data. And that I think the Blue Cloud project was really instrumental in bringing people together to work on data. So how do you harmonize your data? How you make your data comparable in fisheries, and how do you then publish them in a safe and sound way? So we have unique identifiers for traceability. That is what we developed through the Blue Cloud. So using those UUIDs that are either machine readable or human readable, you can find a lot of information on the species and the fisheries and stocks that are available in the semantic knowledge base behind this VLIZ. Next slide, please. So in the Blue Cloud, so the topic of today, we use these two demonstrators. So the one you already saw before for fish and matter of scales. And we also use the same infrastructure, the same tools. So a lot of focus on reusability of data, reusability of tools, and reusability of services. So the two demonstrators that we have, they reuse a lot of components across each other. And we think it's also interesting for people that are new to the Blue Cloud to think about what they can reuse that's already available in Blue Cloud. Next one, please. Another advantage of Blue Cloud is this huge flexibility that we have. So this whole generic approach to data access and data discovery that was already shown in the beginning by Thijsse, is really helping us in the fisheries department to show much more data around the fisheries and the stocks where and the areas where they live than we have if we only look at fisheries data. So we see a lot of data coming from Pittonet that is very interesting for us to analyze our fisheries better. And we also are interested in the essential ocean variables that Massimiliano Drudi, for instance, just presented. Also, the data processing of Blue Cloud is very interesting for us. So we can think of what is the impact of weather events on fisheries, what is the impact of storms on the aquaculture areas, etc., etc. So we are really very enthusiastic about using these Blue Cloud services to better understand fisheries and aquaculture. We also are interested to enrich, for instance, a feature that we detect. If we find a aquaculture cage, so how do we then say who's the owner? What is the administrative area where it is? What is the governance? What are the species cultured? So with Blue Cloud, we see that we have a lot of options to merge data that come from different directions and merge them in one single theory. And the result of that are data-rich atlases for regional analysis. And in the Mediterranean, in the Caribbean region, we now work on a WCAF test case. And WCAF is the fisheries organization basically on the Central Atlantic and the Caribbean. Next slide, please. All data that are spatially explicit are managed through the Global Tuna Geo Network. So this is a lot of ISO OGC compliant data where we have as FAO developed GeoFlow and the OpenVR viewer that are R-based tools that you can use as open source components to access and manage the data that are relevant to fisheries in the Blue Cloud domain. Next slide, please. We also use the same infrastructure for applications. So there is a way to deploy Docker containers on the DefaScience infrastructure. And we use that, for instance, for a big global training tool that is related to the train countries to understand their fisheries with in the framework of the SDG 1441. So we go to countries and we train them on what are stock assessments, what are is usefulness of stock assessment, what are the limitations of stock assessment. And for that, we also use the same infrastructure as the Blue Cloud project uses. For us, it's a very powerful training, so we can go do remote trainings across the planet. We have then 60 or 70 people at the same time learning about stock assessment and learning how to use the tools. So not only from a technical perspective, but also what is then the value of the analysis that you do. So when is it, were your input parameters correct? Where is the analysis in line with what your expectations are? How do you compare one assessment approach with another one, et cetera, et cetera. So it's more than just a technical approach. It's a really a collaborative approach, which is made possible through Blue Cloud services. Next slide. So bringing then that all together is so in a fisheries atlas. So we understand there's more than fish in the ocean. So bringing the fisheries data together with the more environmental data or data that come from other domains is where we see the real benefit of Blue Cloud. And then also with the ease of developing analytical services in the map viewer, for instance, using our Shiny apps that are integrated with our map viewer. It's a really nice and a new way, innovative way to show the statistics that we have collected over the past decades in a new and I think more attractive format than before. Next slide, please. And for the aquaculture part, very quickly, only 2 slides today. We manage now with a CLS product to use Sentinel-1 radar data to detect cages or vessels or whatever you give as a training set to this algorithm. And we've tested this on Chilean salmon cages and Mediterranean bream and bass cages, and we have quite a high accuracy. So we detect 90%, 95% of the cages. And then we have developed with Blue Cloud support an integration service to make the data visible in the same Blue Cloud viewer that we have seen in the fisheries use cases. So we reuse the components that we have developed for one use case, and we reuse it for the aquaculture, which really drove down the cost of development of this theory. And we are now working in FAO with the Blue Cloud to manage the attributes that we find with the cages. So we have a lot of data coming from the countries itself, that will tell us what type of cages were there, what type of fish were, but all things that you cannot see from a satellite, printed the fish species and also the ownership data. This is currently in test, and we also work now with integration with OpenStreetMap to see more information on distances between protected areas and the cages. Next slide, please, and that should be my last. And another approach to analyze satellite information, this is on optical data. It's a product developed by CLS to detect ponds and to make a land classification of coastal areas in tropical areas, which is notoriously difficult to manage. So a lot of people get stuck in the mud because the features are so difficult to distinguish. And we think with the product of CLS and a lot of ground truthing, we now manage to make distinctions between rice paddies and fish ponds, which is, of course, they look very similar from above. So you need a lot of artificial intelligence to be able to make this distinction between the two types of land classification. And this is still in development, and it is an interesting case of reusing again a service and a VRE to share the results, to discuss this with people in the field in Indonesia, so they can immediately see the output of a analysis, and they can immediately access it and provide comments, which is much easier than if you would have to work with a traditional GIS system. So this is another advantage of working with the cloud, is the immediate data availability with people that collaborate on the other side of the planet with you. Okay, I think there's the last slide, and a big thank you, and maybe speak to you another time, another occasion on using Blue Cloud services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anton. And with that, we've come to the end of this first part, which was dedicated to presenting Blue Cloud. We're now going to give you a 10-minute break. So we will reconvene at 35 minutes in our devices. I mean, in my time zone is 27. We'll reconvene at 35. And for the second part, that's where the core of the discussion around the opportunities for the Atlantic region will be held and moderated by Obakeng Molelo. So you can leave your device there, just turn off your camera and microphone, and let's meet here in a few minutes. See you. Thanks. So now I'm happy to welcome the panelists for today. So we have Obakeng Molelo, visiting researcher at the COMRAD, which is the Coastal and Marine Resources Development in Kenya. Then Toste Tanwa, from coordinator of the EOSC project, Stefan Pesan from the Atlantico project. He also wears the Blue Cloud hat, but today will represent Atlantico. Georgios Kazanidis from iAtlantic, Ivo Grigorov from Mission Atlantique, Frank Legal from Astral, and Rocio Castagno Primo from Triatlas. So I'll leave the floor to Obakeng now.
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us for part 2 of the webinar. Just to bring everything together that was happening in part 1, I'd like to just comment that with Blue Cloud, the tools, the services, and access to Blue Cloud are fundamental to science and understanding the blue economy, especially from a sustainable perspective, considering the social impact, environmental impact, as well as the economic resources that we are getting from the oceans. However, one of the fundamental aspects is the equitable use of these resources. The challenges that have been experienced in the Atlantic Ocean are not just in the Atlantic Ocean. The same challenges are also being experienced within the Indian Ocean as well as the Pacific Ocean. So coming from the Western Indian Ocean, I'd just like to say that we are also having the same array of problems, and access to data is also becoming a problem, or more, not really a problem, but becomes challenging because it's not all found in the same place. And some of this data belongs to different entities who are not willing to necessarily share their data. In terms of long-term funding, it is also a problem for some observations to actually start making a difference. And have a consistent flow of incoming ocean data. But the involvement of government is also important. And I think from the talks, there was nothing that was said about the involvement of government, but I think to some extent, it is quite important. For example, in South Africa, there's a research vessel that is actually owned by the Department of Environmental Affairs, which goes every year to the sub-Antarctic with researchers from the whole Waiho region involved, and some of them working for a long time on the research vessel or on Marion Island. On some trips, they've also invited young and emerging scientists to work on the vessel for a few days, just to get some experience on research, and actually not just research in one region, but inter-regional research. Promoting the Internet of Things in technology is important to collect high quality data and therefore continuously improving technology on the ship, as well as the technology we as researchers are using, is very important. Therefore, I'd like us to open the panel. Starting to open, one of the first things that I'd like us to discuss in the panel discussion is the issue on transforming data into knowledge by investing in IT observations. So I'd like to pass the buck on to Stefan to start.
Thank you. Yes, so transforming data into knowledge, that's obviously key if we want to meet societal challenges. It says there, investing in IT observations, investing in information technologies. We've been doing that for many years now, developing new sensors. We can think of profilers from the Argo program that are now all over the oceans, giving us important data. Investing in developing new technologies like genetic sensors is quite important, and it's going on at the moment. Then investing in infrastructures, so having the ability to harmonize data, to have collaborative platforms, to have cloud-based solutions like the Blue Cloud, that's happening now. That's really a new thing, and we need to continue to invest in that. What I think we don't talk enough about is that we need to invest, when I say we, the users, just the scientific community, we need to invest in doing things differently, to start using these platforms, all these resources, and that's things that I think the different projects can start investing in. For example, with Atlantico, Atlantico is a European project, so we need to be tractable, we have deliverables, milestones, and all that. And because of that, we decided to, by default, do business as usual, which is we have partners that, because Atlantico is about modeling the marine microbiome in the Atlantic Ocean. So we have partners who are developing codes to do modeling. They run the models locally on their machines. They store the data locally, of course, through the project, through the data management plan that we have. The codes will be archived and shared in the likes of GitHub. The results, the data outputs will be shared. It could be in Zenodo or different platforms. But I think we need to go a step further. And there is a collaboration between the Blue Cloud and Atlantico. And what we aim to do towards the end of the project is to deploy, to move all the codes into the Blue Cloud, so that we make sure that all the analyses that were done, all the modeling that was done is doable in the Blue Cloud by the end of the project, so that people can use all the resources and the methodology that we developed beyond the lifetime of the project. And that's something that all the other projects could start doing. I don't know if there are other examples from other projects. But that's roughly what I wanted to contribute to that that topic, that there are resources like the Blue Cloud being developed. So there has been an investment already. We need to continue that. And we, the users, need to invest in using them, making that, if we don't use them, then it would be an investment that will die. So we need to really change the way we do science.
Yes, I agree with you, Stephanie. I think it also, once the users are actually investing in it, it will also increase the usability and the amount of use. So if somebody else is investing in it, you might not even find a need for it. So you'll make sure that you're using it to its fullest capacity. So I agree with your sentiment that we as the research users should be the ones also investing to a certain extent. So I see a hand up by Dr. Georgios. Can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. Hi to all the panelists, hi to all the participants, and it's great to be with you here. I'm Georgios Kazanidis from the iAtlantic project, which aims to advance our understanding about deep sea ecosystems and open ocean ecosystems in the North and the South Atlantic. And here, I would like to add on to build on what Stefan has already mentioned. I totally agree with what he mentioned. Just I would like to add a few things about that point from the iAtlantic perspective, and specifically I would like to bring to your attention that iAtlantic is working towards a GEOS Atlantic Community Portal, which will draw together the international Atlantic observation community by strengthening and growing the network of factors in Atlantic Ocean Observatory. So lot different of data sets will be brought together, and they will be put in this iAtlantic community GEOS portal, and we think that it will play a very important role in maximizing the impact of all these available data sets out there, and of course it can support the sustainable development in both the North and the South Atlantic, and I can provide more information later on to those that are interested in that. Thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward for the rest of the discussion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Georgios. That was very interesting and a good contribution to the discussion. There's another hand up by Thijsse. Can you please unmute yourself?
Thank you, Joaquin. Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank Sara and the colleagues at the Blue Cloud for supporting the cluster that developed this policy brief and to giving some time here to discuss the policy brief. So I'm Thijsse. I am coordinating the EU project EOSC, which is about ocean observing and forecasting and integration of observations to reach these goals. And for this particular point, I would mention IT, and Stefan said information technology, but I think you can also call IT Internet of Things. So I think we need to be smarter when we develop sensors, have algorithms that the data can go into forecasting systems much more faster than we used to, and be integrated in the information technology that the Blue Cloud and others are building. So a pledge from EOSC and for this point is probably to have more of good enough sensors that are delivering data at the fastest pace. I think that is one thing that we can take home from this particular point out of the 5 recommendations that are listed in the policy brief. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Thijsse. You can put your hand down so you don't get tired. Thank you. I think one of the other things, another point was brought up with the Internet of Things, and it's that if things start being integrated, it will also help in reducing some of the discrepancies that prevail between baseline knowledge and information of different areas, but then they're all collected in the same ocean. So this is a very important recommendation. I think there's no other questions in the Q&A. So I would like to then move on to the second recommendation. So in terms of strengthening citizen science for policy, equitable access to information, democratization, and critical data contributions, I'd like to invite Ivo to open up this discussion on strengthening citizen science within Blue Cloud, as well as the Atlantic research realm.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the organizers and all of you for attending. I'm not a citizen science expert myself, but I am a member of this Atlantic community. So I'd like to briefly offer you just a couple of tangents for reflection on strengthening citizen sciences. And that is, one of them is, are we reaching out enough? And also, are we reaching enough within our own community? And what I mean by that is that some of the issues that we've already kind of touched upon on infrastructure, transferring data into knowledge, can we combine maybe this external data sets with research data sets, and how do we scale up? Some of those issues are actually being already tackled by the hardcore citizen science communities and associations. So I'm wondering whether we are missing an opportunity there to work with them enough and really jointly tackle this problem. And the second one that's probably more positive is, are we reaching enough within our own communities? And what I mean by that is, are we actually doing a lot of citizen science, but we're just missing on the opportunity to label it as such? And I think the hackathons presented can be, in forward mode, a very exciting example of citizen science. Of course, they're very technical. They require a subset of technically apt citizens. However, there are plenty of examples where software engineers fixed ecosystem models to a point where they are highly more performant than originally designed. So why not capitalize on examples like this? Something else that maybe we're not thinking of enough in the context of citizen science. In this forum, there's at least two projects, iAtlantic and the one I'm involved in, Mission Atlantic, that perform something that is labeled as integrated ecosystem assessment. And what that requires is really a strong citizen science participation. What we are doing is we are targeting a large body of stakeholders, a diverse spectrum of stakeholders. And we're essentially asking them to parameterize complex social natural science models so that we feed science-based policy to higher level and into SDGs, if you like. So if we are already doing this involvement and engagement and tapping into the citizens, the professional citizen scientists know-how and transforming that into policy, why aren't we thinking of that as citizen science?
Thank you very much, Ivo. I have a question, Ivo, regarding the citizen science. But then, firstly, then how are we going to start vetting the information or the data the citizens are actually bringing in to make sure that it's on a good scientific level and it's usable for policy as well as for decision making? That is my question. And then thereafter, we can go to Frank, whose hand is up, and then Rochelle.
I don't sit on the answer myself, but for sure the citizen science associations are trying to tackle the very same issue across any research discipline, and also thinking of how to best capitalize on e-infrastructure, just like the one lying behind the Blue Cloud and the EOSC setup. So I believe we are trying to tackle this question in parallel, and maybe we have a lot of friends that we don't know about that could help us run faster in that direction.
Thank you. Frank, you can unmute.
Hello, so I'm Frank Legal from EGM, and I'm here representing the Astral project. Just first to say we are quite happy to have been invited in that webinar, in that panel. I think it's the first time we are invited in that. Maybe a bit late in the process, but still good to be in. So we are quite happy to be able to contribute to that. We have a number of activities in the Astral project related to policy definition, briefs, and recommendations, the definitions, social assessment, and so on. So there are many topics where we could contribute. Here, my point will be related to the first two bullet points. So not only citizen science, citizen itself, but in Astral, we are dealing with aquaculture and integrated multitrophic aquaculture in general. And there we have a number of small farms and so on, aquacultures that are also doing a number of observations on the field from their farms. And there should be some mechanism also for them to provide their observations. So they are not directly citizen observation, but still it's small farms. And today, probably they are underrepresented in this data collection process, which is more based on large scale satellite based and so on observations, but we need observations from the ground as well. And these aquaculture farms are quite important, and especially when looking at IMTA, because it's not only about fishes, it's about many things in the ocean. And in Astral, for example, they are developing low-cost sensors and so on. So I could talk a bit more of it later on, but I think it's quite important, my point, to consider also these farms are data providers in this work.
Thank you very much, Frank. Rocio, I hope I said your name right.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you, Vaken. A little bit following up on your question too, and also tying up with the first point of transforming data into knowledge. I guess this is a question for the rest of the panelists. Where do you see data quality control fit into the whole flow? Because the first 2 points, if we don't have a way to ensure data quality, or at least an estimation of uncertainties, or however you want to define it, it seems like we are relinquishing sort of our responsibility onto the citizen scientists or the sensors or the machine. So there still needs, it still needs some post-processing, and I would like to hear your thoughts, or if in any of the projects you have already have some ideas on where to fit that step.
I'm keeping quiet because I'm waiting for somebody's hand to come up. Frank.
Yes, Frank speaking. Okay, not a complete answer, but maybe it relates to the third bullet point also, because it's also based on the standards and the practices we will agree on, that we can also manage these data quality. So I'm especially thinking about IoT information, which is being collected, and the way we annotate the data, what we associate with IoT, not simply getting measures, temperature, but also knowing what is the unit of that temperature, using common frameworks for collecting these metadata, and also related to the sensors which are providing the data, and so on and so on. So these relate, I would say, first to having common standard for that. And then processes obviously are needed afterward for checking, especially if you want to do some research based on these sensors and not real-time control, which is a bit different. but still we will need this third bullet point to be able to do this cleaning or trust building on the data set.
Yes, maybe adding on to that. So in operational oceanography, there are already good routines set up to do quality control on almost automatic or near real-time way. If we look at citizen science, I think it's important that we keep a link between the citizens contributing to science and the scientific community, so that the quality control, quality check can go through the same pipeline. That's.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Thijsse.
No, I agree completely with what Stefan said and others. I think, I've been working a little bit with the sailing community, and there is a lot of appetite to help ocean science take observations. So I think what we need to do is to make sure that the data that they gather really have a use. So we have to make sure that we adapt our data management structures. So first of all, to find a place for the data to sit, and then making sure that the citizens that collected data see that the data has been used for something that is useful, right? I think we need to think in the data sense as well, and accept that some of the citizen science data, not all, but some, might be of slightly different accuracy and precision that we're used to, but we can adapt to that by having appropriate metadata and having the mass of more data compensating a little bit for that. Maybe more citizen, lower quality data, if you like. So I think there is a lot of opportunity, and it's great to engage citizens because they do care about the ocean. Thank you.
I agree with you, Thijsse. And before going to Dr. Georges, I'd also like to start the panelists also thinking about, it was also mentioned in terms of aquaculture. Also in part 1, there was reference to aquaculture as well as monitoring there. So we should also start thinking about small to medium enterprises. Are they considered also as part of citizen science? Because they're sort of standing in the middle. They are also deriving an economy from the ocean and can also provide us with valuable data as well. So this is just something for the panelists to also consider. Dr. Georges, take it away.
Thank you very much. Just I would like to reemphasize that I agree totally with what Stefan and Thijsse said about the use of citizen data. And especially I would like to highlight the importance of for the production of protocols about the collection of this citizen data, easily understood protocols that can be used by citizens. I think that this can play a very important role. And another point that can have an important contribution apart from the production of protocols is that to make this data transparent and available in open access, so people can see what has been collected and how it can be used. So the development of protocols and of course making the data and the metadata available in open access. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There's 2 other hands up, but I'll give you guys like briefly 30 seconds so that we can move on to the other recommendations.
Yes, quickly. Now I was looking at the text of the policy brief on my second screen. And in the citizen science part, there is mention of education. I think that's perhaps in another version of the policy brief, we should emphasize a bit more on ocean literacy and what role the Blue Cloud could play in there. Bringing the schools as users, so classes using the Blue Cloud to in the curriculum, that could be a nice addition, I think.
That's a good addition. Rocio?
Just very briefly following on what Georgios mentioned of including also small businesses for the data. it's going to be interesting to see how reluctant or how open they are to opening their data because of the whole business layer in that thing. So I think that would be very exciting to see in the near future.
Yes, especially in terms of data security. We can't wait. Let's see what the future holds. So I'd like us to move along to the next recommendation, which refers to defining global standards and interoperability practices. For this one, I would like Frank to start us off. And one of the things that I'd also in that discussion is that can we talk about connecting the global standards to local and regional data structures that are currently being used, or ones that can also be developed in the future.
Okay, so I understand that you want me to start on that. So I will explain how we are moving forward in an Astral, knowing that it's also built on a previous or other running project efficiency that we have, both projects being related to aquaculture. And the way Astral is being organized, there are different things, but it's quite a lot on local monitoring on fish farm level. So we have a whole group developing local sensors and so on to collect the data in real time and sending it to operations. So it's a bit different maybe. You have a nice in Blue Cloud. I really love your data catalog, access to data. What we miss maybe is real-time access to the data and to the stream of information, to the flow of information. So in Astral, we are really looking on this real stream of data, deploying these sensors in the field and collecting data in real time. But speaking about phytoplankton, so this is kind of online sensors that the project is working on, microplastic and so on, nutrients, so and with real-time monitoring on the field. And the idea is, yes, to get access to this data in real time, and for that we build on standards which are based on or developed by the EOSC. They have the ugly name of NGSILD, but it's really made to represent all information using cross-domain data models. So it's not specific to any domain. So it's not specifically to sea, to fish, to water. No, it provides a base to exchange context information. So pieces of information which are contextualized in time, space, and relation to other information. And this is quite important because it's the basis for linked data. So to allow exchange of data sets which are linked to each other. And so we use also common interfaces, common API, where you can query the data, you can subscribe to events, you can get notified if any thresholds are raised, and so on. And there are some ongoing work also to use this common layer to connect other data sets from space observation, for example, or any kind of geo information. So this is all related. And that's the approach we use in the project, and build this common platform where we can really interoperate on the data. It doesn't mean that we have to share all the data. This is still on the right you put on the data you provide, but at least we have the means to exchange data across different actors in the project, with the idea to be able to go beyond. And for that, again, so we use open standards, and it's also grounded by open source implementation. So you may know the Fireware initiative in Europe. So it's the same ecosystem. So it's a big ecosystem of hundreds of contributors. So we have the Lego game. So we can take the bricks, the software Lego bricks, and build the application we need using that exchange standard across the product. And this is what we do. So from the sensor, the platform, and now also there is the needs. There was some nice Jupyter notebooks being shown, for example. So there is the need now in the project to deploy machine learned algorithm. So it's what we call machine learning as a service. So being able to push new models in the platform, so to enrich information. So this is the way we proceed in Astral.
Okay, that was a lot, Frank. But thank you very much. It is actually increasing our understanding on it. There's a comment from from Toste, he also added a link for everybody else who's interested. And in the comment that is accompanied by a link, he says that the standards and best practices are important, not only for data, but also on how the observations are actually made. So if you're interested in that, there's also a link in the chat. I'd like to find out if there's anybody else in the panel who'd like to comment on the global standards for data collection, as well as how the observations are being made. Are you sure? This is your only chance. Okay. So in terms of time, I'm not that good at time, but I'm doing very well right now. So we still have 7 minutes for the panel discussion. So the next point in the panel discussion is supporting professionalism on the next generation of blue staff. So in terms of that, we also, the recommendation is based on training new staff. It was also mentioned earlier on education, even though it was about ocean literacy and giving access to schools, giving schools access to the blue cloud. What about the current university students or students who want to go into marine science? What new skills can they actually be exposed to? Since things are changing so much, there's also going to be the Internet of Things. So I'd like somebody from the panel to please elaborate on the recommendation, please. Thank you, Georgios.
No problem at all. And I hope what I will say will be pleasant for the young generation in the background that I can hear. So I'm sorry. No problem at all. It's part of life. This is a very important point about, let's say, the capacity building of the younger generation and how we can train the young scientists in order to become even better from the current generation. I think this is a key point so that we can make scientific progress and also social progress. And just I would like to highlight a few things here for the iAtlantic project, and then the other leaders can say their own perspective about that. So in iAtlantic project, we have the iAtlantic Fellows community, which spans across the North and the South Atlantic Ocean. It's mainly composed from young scientists. There are also a series of tutorials and webinars in order to increase and improve the transferable skills of a young generation. And also I would like to highlight that recently the Mirabilis research expedition took place of Cabo Verde, and during that cruise a series of educational videos were recorded from young scientists. And these videos are, for example, how we process samples that have been collected from a remotely operated vehicle, or how do we communicate research findings to the wider community and to the public. All these videos have been posted to YouTube. They are available to the public, and I think that they can have an important contribution to support the younger generation to improve their to contribute to capacity building and, let's say, raise a young generation of marine scientists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Dr. Georgios as well. Is that, do you think it will also be, I'm not sure about this education system in Europe, but then in high schools, is marine science actually offered? Because in South Africa, for the first time next year, they're going to start actually offering marine science in high school, only for senior, from grade 10 until for the last 3 years of high school. So I'd also like to find that out, and how that will also contribute to the Greater Blue Cloud Initiative and All Atlantic.
Yes, if I understood correctly the question, my answer is that as far as I'm concerned, this is not offered to the high school level. That's my experience for UK and Greece. But I know that a number of people from the universities, they offer to give lectures to high schools in order to bring the students closer to marine science. And I think this is quite important. I do it a lot. I have been doing that, and I will be doing that also in 2022. I will promote marine science in schools that they do not have access to this kind of information. So, but I'm really excited to hear that this is happening already in some countries, and I hope that other countries will follow this example. I think this is good practice, and I really hope that we will see it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ivo.
I'll keep it brief and hopefully provocative. I think on this point, as collection of projects, we do much better reaching out to the outside world, and like the examples given, reaching out to schools. And I love the examples of schools that will teach marine science. I'm sitting next to an international school that teaches fisheries management, which I thought was extremely an example of an outlier. But what we maybe need to do in order to support this fourth point on the joint recommendations is actually, as projects engage more with the key partner where the professionalization happens, and that's probably the graduate schools where the next generation of blue stuff actually comes out of. And I think you'll find out that more often than not, they don't agree on the diversity of skills that we here recommend, or at least they are not rewarded as a career skill. So maybe we need to do something about that collectively.
Thank you very much. Yes, skills development is very important, and also changing things up and changing the skills up, because everything is changing all the time. I think one of the last points for Rocio, do you want to speak now, or must I? Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds. You can go before I bring.
Yes, like there has been, I agree with a lot of the comments about like graduate schools and early career researchers, etc., that the brief points out. And I think a good way of also encouraging to get into the blue economy is to show these students, graduate students, how they can get in also in careers that are not academia, which I think it's probably not that attractive to everyone. And
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we just take them to the ocean. That's more attractive. I remember when I was in graduate school, my brother's friend told me that no, I shouldn't study sociology. I should study archaeology and geography. They have more field trips, and look where that landed me now. So you just need to trick them a bit, I suppose. I think then I'd like to please move on to the last point. And can I please ask Sara, can we please have 5 minutes in the Q&A session, please? Sure. Because this is quite, this is a good topic. This is a good point in terms of long-term funding. For all researchers, funding is a big issue. There are times when you feel that if only you had a little more funding or funding for longer, you'd actually be able to fulfill or achieve more of your objectives. So I'd like Toste or Rocio or anybody else who's willing to talk about long-term funding and its impact on ocean observation and how it can actually improve ocean observation as well as the data collection processes.
Maybe I can start, Bakeng. So ocean observations or observations of the ocean is really one part of the value chain that leads up to, in the end, information and knowledge that can guide our decisions on many things. Observations have traditionally been made in the ocean on a scientific base, on a research base, and it's still being done like that. So something in the order of 2/3 or 3/4 of all ocean observations are funded on short-term research funding. which is not sustainable. It creates a lot of uncertainty, and it creates issues with sustainability of the whole system. And it really ties back to the previous point when we talked about the blue staff. We talked about staff that are not in academic, but also the one in academia. It's a tough world, and it's hard to make a career and get a position. And you very often going from one short-term contract to the next based on research funding. I think we need to move towards a more sustainable long-term funding system for ocean research, ocean observations, seeing that as a research infrastructure. That will create that data flow to the data systems. That is another very important part, of course, in the value chain. So that is the point of this here, to use the limited resources we have better and have remove some of the renewal uncertainty, creating some possibilities and options for the blue stuff. And now we don't do that very well, and it creates a lot of gaps in particular time series. And time series are turning out to be the valuable assets of ocean observations. How was the ocean doing 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, and how it's doing now? And that can easily, you can project that in the future on different scenarios. So these are really important, and we need sustainability to keep those. That is one of the points in that recommendation. And second one I would like to touch on is the policies to attain permission to do marine scientific research in the economic exclusive zones of other countries. These are regulated in something they call UNCLOS. It's the United Nations international law framework. It was done before we had many of the requirements that we have today of more sustained observations to feed operational services, but also done before we had platforms like gliders and floats and robots. And it's a system that's not quite fit for purpose. And this recommendation really talks about how we in the European Union at least could work towards a European framework to make that process easier. Now we are missing a lot of opportunity to get data from the ocean just because of bureaucracy and difficulties in applying for marine scientific research. And by the way, it's kind of uncertain what the definition is of marine scientific research. So if we are taking observations for some operational purpose of understanding heat waves, for instance, that is still considered research in the books there. So there are a lot of uncertainty, and I think that the policy brief really looking forward to the European Union to come up with some framework, unified framework within the Union to facilitate working in the member states' waters in the European Union, and in the long term, ideally make a framework that make it easier internationally. I can talk a lot about this particular thing, and in EOSC we have a task that look at the legal framework of making ocean observations. So I'm going to stop there. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much for clarifying and reminding us of the uncertainties that we're working in as scientists, and how this policy brief can actually contribute to a slight change and a mindset change in policy. Frank, your hand is up.
Yes, only to say that I can only support this proposal. As we see in this aquaculture field where we are really on the on-site monitoring, we see that it takes time to have trusted data sources from sensors on the spot. So it takes time to deploy, and then it costs money to maintain over the time. So, and in addition, if we want to do analysis, especially when looking at IMTA, we really need to go and to analyze over multi-seasons. So it's not only one shot, 3 months will not tell us that much. So we really have to be able to maintain data collection over several years, over several seasons, and maintain that trusted chain of data acquisition. So yes, we need that policy framework, yes.
Thank you, Frank. I will jump straight into the question and answer session. So I would like to, there's a question here from Anna. Anna is joining us in the webinar. So Anna, I would like you to please clarify your question. I'll read it out, and then during that time, will you kindly please unmute yourself and then clarify your question. So Anna was asking, she says, my question is if there's a possibility to add this in the platform, an application that permits to any user to get meteorological traceability of all level of data. Okay, Anna, please can you unmute yourself if you don't mind, and clarify your question, because there's a lot of discussions that happened. Okay. Frank, is your hand still up? Thijsse, you can speak.
I wanted to answer Anna on the traceability. And the metrology is indeed good in traceability. It's really about metadata. I think we need to be much better at metadata. So we understand who made the observations and what kind of instruments and what can we expect in terms of precision and things like that from the data. So I know many people are working hard on that. So we're making a lot of progress. But it's also very important in this world where we are funded by science, right? That the data that you took from a science project are getting credit for, you know, the funding agency is getting the credit due to the data. So I think we can work a lot on the traceability and understanding the value chain of that data and the use of it. I just might come back to the concept of essential ocean variables. So we are saying that it doesn't really matter if your temperature data, say, is coming from a CTD or an Argo float or something else, as long as we know what the precision and accuracy is of that data, what is the uncertainty of that data. There is no really bad data. You know, an uncertainty of 2 degrees is huge in the ocean, but maybe it's good enough in some certain coastal frameworks. If you know the uncertainty is 2 degrees or 1 degree, you can still use that data. So I'm sorry, I think that's my take on traceability. It's really metadata. Thank you.
Thank you, Thijsse, for the clarification. I've been informed that Sara was unmuted. I'm not sure if she still wants to speak or if Thijsse addressed her. And then thereafter, I'm going back to Sara.
Thanks, unless Anna wants to say something now that she can.
Oh, so I said Sara.
Talk, but I'll leave her the floor and then I'll be happy to close.
Okay.
Anna, can you? Okay, she said she's going to type. Anyhow, we brought in a very relevant point. I think there are many aspects that relate to the quality of the data. We have the metadata. I think the discussion today was really extremely valuable. I'm sure the colleagues from the Anchor and initiative will have plenty of hints and insights, I mean, to work on for their roadmap. I'd like just to conclude the workshop by adding a couple of thoughts as Blue Cloud coordinator, but also as remember that the projects that were with us today is all in a way or another feed into the European Open Science Cloud, which is the framework that in Europe we are trying to build to create a system where all the dots and all these aspects possibly are really interconnected to ensure open science as a flow or as a starting from the ground, in our case, from the data gathering up to the last research activity that researchers perform. We've talked about training and professionalization of the next generation. This is a topic that doesn't affect only the ocean and the marine research. For instance, I mean, at the European Open Science Cloud now there is a governance that is being set up, a model, and within this governance structure, there are bodies assigned with specific tasks, and careers in education is the core of one of these tasks. So that's why, I mean, of course, it's fundamental path. It's a fundamental aspect to follow, and understanding how this can affect the thematic research from a thematic point of view, but also from the recognizability, for instance, of the skills that people have is something that should be, is a cross-disciplinary aspects. I mean, Obakeng made a nice comment, said I started as I could have been a humanities researcher and now, I mean, things change, but that's exactly the case, because the way research is, I mean, is seen strategically today is exactly this, to go beyond the pure thematic one. We've talked about transforming data into knowledge. I mean, the push towards socioeconomic analysis of all the data is extremely timely. We've seen the demonstrators, how the Blue Cloud demonstrators move data from I mean, from the marine science to the food network to the transport institute with transport initiatives. Our partners today all tackled with data that can be used at various levels. So again, this interdisciplinary aspect is also fundamental. The hackathon that we are going to launch in February, we also hope will push education in a certain way. So universities are one of our targets for the challenges that we have in the hackathon. We have talked about citizen science. Of course, the way Blue Cloud is structured requires knowledge of tools, a certain background. The solution there are tailored, are customized. But I mean, the access from citizen science is one of the long-term views that, for instance, the European Commission has at all levels, from the data gathering up to the usage of the data to do models. We're talking about the industry, for instance. And the last point refers to FAIR. So we have a point here which we talk about define global standards, where when preparing the event, we had a comment say that there are no global standards. That's probably right. What we need is a fair approach to the standards, ensuring that the data are managed and gathered in a way that is really usable across the level. And in terms of sustainability is ensured by usage. So the more users we get, the more the European Commission, in our case, and here we talk regionally, but I hope that we can think in the same line across the Atlantic region, will have interest in maintaining the solution. So that's why, again, all the inputs you gave from the bottom up of the line, I think are the core of all the work that we are all doing. So I try to summarize a little bit on the really interesting aspects that have been tackled today. We received comments. We hope that among the audience there will be potential users. Bring in your community. We have a model that is customized, can be customized and adapted to different tools, type of data, research needs. So just start a discussion. And I think the collaboration with the colleagues of the Atlantic initiatives that were with us today can really open our minds first and open other opportunities. So I think that's what I wanted to say, and I really love this webinar. I thank you very much to all our panelists and colleagues. Thanks Obakeng for the excellent moderation. Unless our colleagues want to give a last word, a very quick tour de table, I think that after that we can close the webinar. So Thijsse, Stefan, Ivo, Gorgios, Frank, and Lucio, if you want just to say a closing word, and then we're done. I'm an obvious enthusiast about the Blue Cloud. I'm part of it, and so I can see really the potential from the inside. But I just want to confirm that coming from the point of the different Atlantic projects, starting for us to use the platform, I think that's the best we can do, and then promote it. Thanks, Thijsse.
As a sister project of the Blue Cloud in EOSC, we are very happy to this really good cooperation here and looking at the whole value chain. I think we need to keep the value chain concepts living, and we are going from the requirement setting to the observations to data and really output. And what I saw today on the virtual labs is really impressive, how we can access data from different, sometimes very complex data sources and use that in an easier way. And I'm going to sit down and try it out myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Georgios.
Yes, I totally agree with what Stefan and Thijsse said. I would like also to add that I found this webinar quite inspirational, to be said. It's quite important, and I have there is a lot of food for thought for later on, and we will be in touch and in order to maximize the impact of all these collaborations. Thank you.
Ivo?
It's a great time for all these projects to stop implementing in parallel and start working across the examples given in the last hour. So yeah, let's do it.
Frank?
Yes, no, really good to see what you have done on the portal, data portal, what you're pushing forward on the policies. So from Astral project, we are really pleased to join you and to be part of your activities in the future. And on the data part, maybe we will have the pleasure to also push some more real-time data from what we are doing in Astral.
And Lucio?
I do agree with what has been said, and I don't want to take more time out of everyone. But and thank you, Sara, for organizing, and to Obaken for moderating the panel.
Thanks. Thank you again, Obaken, for your moderation. Thank you to all our participants, and thank you to the team behind the scenes who help with this. We hope we've got your interest. Stay touched. We hope to see you in January for the warm-up event for the Hackathon, and then in February with your teammates. Thank you all, and have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.